The ocean does not forgive hesitation. And in the narrow corridors where Russian warships patrol alongside North Atlantic Treaty Organization vessels, hesitation can be measured in seconds. What happens when a Russian vessel opens fire near Allied ships? The answer is not what Hollywood taught you. It is faster, more calculated, and far more dangerous than any missile exchange. Because the real battle begins long before anyone pulls a trigger. In this analysis, we are going to break down the mechanics of naval confrontation, the doctrine that governs split-second decisions, and the technology that turns chaos into calculated response. This is not speculation. This is how modern navies operate when the stakes become real. Picture the Black Sea on a cold morning. A United States Navy destroyer is conducting routine freedom of navigation operations. Nearby, a Russian frigate has been shadowing for hours. Both crews know each other's moves. Both captains have studied the other's doctrine. And then, without warning, the Russian vessel fires. But here's the part most people miss. That shot was not necessarily an attack. It might have been a warning. It could have been a miscommunication, or it might have been exactly what it looked like. The United States Navy does not have the luxury of waiting to find out. The response protocol activates in milliseconds. Not because humans are that fast, but because the systems watching the Russian ship have already been tracking every movement, every radar emission, every course change for hours. When the weapon fires, the ship's Combat Information Center already has a targeting solution. The question is not whether they can respond. The question is whether they should. This is where doctrine meets reality. The United States Navy operates under rules of engagement that have been refined through decades of close encounters, near misses, and actual combat. These rules are not suggestions. They are the difference between a contained incident and a regional war. Now, this is where the ocean lies to you. On a map, ships look like dots moving across blue space. In reality, a destroyer at sea is a floating command center processing thousands of data points every second. Radar returns, electronic signals, acoustic signatures, satellite feeds, human intelligence. All of this flows into a picture that the captain must interpret in real time. You know, when a Russian warship fires, that picture suddenly gets very complicated. Was it a defensive system activating automatically? Was it a deliberate provocation? Was it aimed at the United States vessel or at something else entirely? The Combat Information Center has seconds to make that determination. The Aegis combat system, which forms the backbone of United States Navy surface warfare capability, is designed precisely for this moment. It can track hundreds of targets simultaneously, discriminate between threats and non-threats, and provide firing solutions faster than any human could calculate. But even Aegis cannot tell you intent. That requires human judgment, and that is the hidden trade-off of modern naval warfare. The technology that makes ships incredibly lethal also makes them incredibly fast. A decision that once took minutes now takes seconds. A response that once required radio communication with headquarters now happens at the speed of computer processing. The advantage is obvious. The danger is that mistakes happen at the same speed. Consider what the captain of that United States destroyer faces. A Russian weapon has fired. The ship's defensive systems are screaming for permission to engage. The crew at battle stations, thousands of miles away, commanders at United States Fleet Forces Command are watching the same data feed. But they are not the ones who will live or die based on the next decision. The captain has options. Return fire immediately under the inherent right of self-defense. Attempt to evade and de-escalate. Request guidance from higher command. Each choice carries consequences that extend far beyond this single ship. But here's the catch. If that Russian projectile is a hypersonic weapon, the captain might have less than 30 seconds to decide. That is not enough time for a phone call to Washington. That is barely enough time to verify the threat assessment. The decision will be made on this bridge by this crew in this moment. This is why training matters more than hardware. Every officer on that destroyer has practiced this scenario hundreds of times in simulators. They know the rules of engagement by heart. They know what responses are authorized and what requires higher approval. They know the difference between a proportional response and an escalation. The Russian Navy knows this too. That is what makes these encounters so dangerous. Both sides are professionals operating sophisticated equipment under intense pressure. Both sides have doctrine designed to protect their interests while avoiding catastrophic escalation. And both sides know that doctrine can fail. Let me explain what a proportional response actually looks like. It is not about matching firepower. A United States destroyer has enough missiles to sink a small fleet. Proportionality is about matching intent. If the Russian fire was a warning shot, the response might be aggressive maneuvering and a very loud radio message. If it was an actual attack, the response escalates accordingly. The graduated response ladder is a concept that every naval officer understands. It starts with presence, simply being there with a capable warship. It moves through posturing, demonstrating capability through exercises and maneuvers. Then comes warning, direct communication that certain actions will trigger certain responses. And finally, if all else fails, engagement. The goal at every step is to avoid climbing to the next one. But here's what the textbooks do not tell you. When you are on a ship that just took fire, the ladder feels very short. The human instinct to survive does not care about graduated responses. This is where the professionalism of the United States Navy becomes critical. These are not 18-year-olds with rifles. These are trained specialists operating billion-dollar weapons platforms. Their entire career has prepared them for the moment when instinct must yield to judgment. Now let us talk about what the Russians see. From Moscow's perspective, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Naval presence near Russian waters represents a strategic threat. The Black Sea, the Baltic Sea, the Arctic Ocean, these are not just waterways to Russia. They are the approaches to the homeland. When a United States destroyer conducts freedom of navigation operations, Washington sees it as upholding international law. Moscow sees it as a provocation. Neither view is entirely wrong. This is the fundamental tension that makes every close encounter potentially catastrophic. Russian naval doctrine emphasizes what they call active defense. This means forward positioning of capable units designed to deter adversaries through the credible threat of immediate response. A Russian frigate shadowing a United States destroyer is not just watching. It is demonstrating that any aggressive action will be met with immediate consequences. The weapons systems tell the story. Russian surface combatants increasingly carry hypersonic missiles that can defeat most defensive systems. Their submarines operate with a quietness that makes detection extremely difficult. Their electronic warfare capabilities can blind sensors and jam communications across wide areas. But the trade-off is hiding in plain sight. Russia has a fraction of the naval tonnage that the United States operates. Their carrier fleet consists of a single aging vessel. Their logistics capability cannot sustain prolonged operations far from home ports. In a short, sharp engagement, Russian ships can be devastatingly effective. In a sustained campaign, numbers eventually tell. This asymmetry shapes behavior on both sides. Yet the United States can afford to be patient. Russia cannot afford to appear weak. Both dynamics push toward confrontation, even when neither side wants war. So what actually happens when shots are fired? Let me walk you through the timeline based on publicly known doctrine and capabilities. 0 seconds. Russian weapon fires. Could be any number of systems, from deck guns to missiles to close-in weapons. The type matters enormously for what comes next. 0.5 seconds. United States ship sensors detect the launch. Radar tracks the projectile. Electronic systems analyze the signature to identify the weapon type. 1 second. Threat assessment algorithms classify the danger level. Is this aimed at us? Is it a warning shot into the water? Is it targeting something else? 2 seconds. Combat Information Center alerts the bridge. The captain now has the information needed to decide. 3 to 5 seconds. If the threat is classified as an incoming attack, defensive systems may engage automatically depending on how they are configured. Point defense systems like the close-in weapon system can fire without human authorization if set to automatic mode. 5 to 10 seconds. If the threat is not immediate, the captain makes the call. Evade, respond, or hold. This is the moment that matters. 10 to 30 seconds. Whatever response is chosen begins execution. If it is a return engagement, missiles are away. If it is evasion, the ship is already turning hard. If it is communication, messages are transmitting on every frequency. 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Higher commands are now aware. Satellite imagery is being tasked. The other assets in the region are repositioning. The incident is no longer local. 2 to 5 minutes. Political leadership is being briefed. The situation has escalated beyond the purely military. Every subsequent decision will be made with an eye toward the global implications. This timeline shows why the first few seconds matter so much. Once weapons are exchanged, the situation develops its own momentum. De-escalation becomes harder with every passing moment. Now, here's the part that should worry everyone. That timeline assumes everything works perfectly. Sensors correctly identify the threat. Communications function as designed. Commanders make rational decisions under pressure. In real combat, none of these assumptions are guaranteed. Electronic warfare can blind sensors. Jamming can disrupt communications. Fear and adrenaline can cloud judgment. The fog of war is not a metaphor. It is a real phenomenon that affects human cognition under stress. This is why close encounters between major navies are so dangerous. Not because anyone wants war, but because the systems designed to prevent war can themselves fail in ways that cause war. Consider the scenario from the Russian perspective again. Their captain sees a United States destroyer maneuvering aggressively near what they consider territorial waters. He has standing orders to defend Russian sovereignty. His weapon systems are tracking the American ship. Maybe the destroyer makes a sharp turn. Maybe it activates a radar that looks like fire control. Maybe a sailor on the Russian bridge misinterprets a communication. Suddenly, someone has to make a decision based on incomplete information, and the Russian captain faces the same pressure as his American counterpart. He has seconds to determine if this is the start of a war or just another day of routine brinkmanship. His career, his crew, and potentially his country depend on getting it right. This mutual pressure is supposed to create caution. Usually it does. Both sides know the risks. Both sides have procedures designed to prevent accidents. Both sides genuinely do not want a conflict that could go nuclear. But here's the thing about probability. Low probability events happen all the time when you run enough trials. Every close encounter is another roll of the dice. Eventually, statistics catch up with everyone. The maritime confrontations we see in the news are only the visible fraction. Ships from the United States, Russia, China, and others interact constantly in disputed waters around the world. Most encounters end with nothing more than tense radio exchanges and aggressive maneuvering, but each one carries the potential for something worse. What makes the North Atlantic Treaty Organization response system effective is not just firepower. It is coordination. When a Russian ship threatens an American destroyer, that destroyer is not alone. Alliance networks immediately activate. Nearby Allied vessels reposition to provide support. Aircraft from multiple nations can be scrambled within minutes. Submarine assets that neither side can see may already be in position. The Russian captain who fires on one ship may discover that he has engaged an entire alliance. This distributed capability is the heart of modern naval deterrence. No single platform has to win by itself. The network provides resilience that no individual ship can match. But networks have vulnerabilities too. Communication links can be jammed or intercepted. Coordination requires time that may not be available. And alliance politics can complicate military decisions in ways that pure capability calculations miss. Consider a scenario where a Russian ship fires on a North Atlantic Treaty Organization vessel from a smaller ally. The United States has overwhelming force available, but using it means escalating on behalf of another country. Does Washington risk a wider war to defend alliance credibility? Does Moscow gamble that the answer is no? These calculations happen in real time under pressure, with incomplete information. The people making them are human. They get tired. They make mistakes. They sometimes let emotion override analysis. The safety systems designed to prevent catastrophe are themselves imperfect. Rules of engagement are written for anticipated scenarios. Reality has a way of presenting unanticipated ones. Doctrine assumes rational actors. Rationality is fragile under stress. None of this means that conflict is inevitable. The long history of Cold War confrontations shows that professionals on both sides can manage tensions for decades without catastrophic miscalculation. The United States and Soviet Union came close to war multiple times but always pulled back. But the current era is different in important ways. Technology moves faster than doctrine can adapt. New weapons create new uncertainties. Political leadership in multiple capitals shows less risk aversion than their predecessors. And the institutional memory of how close the world came to nuclear war has faded with the generation that lived through it. So, what should we take from all this? First, that naval confrontations are far more complex than headlines suggest. A single incident involves thousands of variables processed through systems designed by committees and operated by stressed humans. Second, that both sides have strong incentives to avoid escalation. But incentives are not guarantees. The same doctrine that prevents most incidents from becoming conflicts can fail at the worst possible moment. Third, that technology is a double-edged sword. The systems that make modern navies effective also make them dangerous. Speed that provides advantage in combat provides less time for judgment. Fourth, that geography matters. The oceans where Russian and North Atlantic Treaty Organization vessels interact are not neutral zones. They are contested spaces where history, economics, and politics create pressures that no amount of military professionalism can fully resolve. And finally, that the people involved are exactly that. People. With families they want to see again. With careers they have spent decades building. With beliefs about their country and its place in the world. They are not robots executing algorithms. They are human beings making life and death decisions under impossible pressure. The next time you see a headline about a close encounter at sea, remember everything that headline does not tell you. The years of training, the split-second decisions, the doctrine refined through hard experience, the technology that both enables and endangers, and the people, on all sides, trying to do their jobs without starting the war that nobody wants. This is naval warfare in the modern era. Not the heroic charges of the past, but careful, calculated, and terrifying in its implications. The ocean does not care about our politics. It simply waits to see who blinks first. That is the reality behind the response when Russian vessels confront North Atlantic Treaty Organization ships. Instant does not mean impulsive. It means prepared. It means practiced. It means professionals doing what professionals do. The question that keeps defense planners awake at night is simple. What happens when preparation meets the scenario nobody prepared for? What happens when doctrine fails and judgment falters? Nobody knows. And in that uncertainty lies both the danger and the hope. As danger because uncertainty breeds miscalculation. Hope because uncertainty also breeds caution. Both sides know they do not know everything, and sometimes that awareness is enough. The seas will remain contested. The ships will keep encountering each other. And somewhere, right now, a captain is watching a radar screen, calculating options, and hoping that today is not the day when everything changes. Let me take you deeper into the sensor architecture that makes these responses possible. A modern United States destroyer carries an array of detection systems that would have seemed like science fiction 50 years ago. The SPY radar family can track ballistic missiles at the edge of space while simultaneously monitoring surface contacts at the horizon. Electronic support measures listen to every emission in the electromagnetic spectrum, building a picture of who is operating what systems and where. Beneath the surface, hull-mounted and towed array sonars create an acoustic picture of the underwater environment. These systems can detect submarines at remarkable distances under the right conditions. But here is the trade-off that every sonar operator understands. The ocean is not a consistent medium. Temperature layers, salinity gradients, and biological noise can create blind spots that no technology can fully overcome. The Russians know this too. Their submarines are designed to exploit these acoustic shadows. Their surface ships carry sophisticated electronic warfare suites designed to deceive and confuse the sensors that United States vessels rely upon. The electromagnetic battlefield is just as contested as the physical one. When a confrontation occurs, both sides are simultaneously trying to see clearly while blinding the other. Jamming, spoofing, and deception are not secondary considerations. They are central to modern naval combat. The side that sees more clearly wins, but clarity is expensive, difficult, and never complete. Consider the information processing challenge. A destroyer's Combat Information Center receives data from dozens of sensors, each producing continuous streams of information. Human operators cannot possibly monitor all of it. Automated systems filter, prioritize, and present what they calculate to be most relevant. But automation has limits. Algorithms are designed for anticipated threats. When something unexpected happens, the system may not recognize its significance. This is where experienced operators earn their value. They notice patterns that do not fit, and they question assessments that feel wrong. They bring human intuition to a problem that pure computation cannot solve. The interaction between human and machine is perhaps the most critical and least understood aspect of modern naval warfare. Too much automation, and you lose the judgment that prevents catastrophic errors. Too little, and you cannot process information fast enough to respond effectively. Every navy in the world is wrestling with this balance. The United States has generally favored keeping humans in the loop for critical decisions. Other nations have experimented with greater automation. There is no consensus on the right answer because the right answer probably depends on circumstances that are impossible to predict in advance. What we do know is that response times are getting shorter. Hypersonic weapons have compressed decision cycles from minutes to seconds. Autonomous systems can engage targets without human input. The trend line points toward faster and faster operations with less and less time for human judgment. This creates a dangerous paradox. The systems designed to protect naval vessels may themselves create risks that the humans operating them cannot control. An automated defensive response that saves a ship could also start a war that nobody wanted. The doctrine governing these systems tries to balance effectiveness against risk. Defensive weapons can be set to automatic mode against certain threat types, while requiring human authorization for others. The boundaries are imperfect. A system designed to defeat incoming missiles might misidentify a passing aircraft. A radar configured to track surface contacts might lock onto a civilian vessel. Mistakes happen. The history of naval operations includes numerous incidents where automated systems or stressed operators made errors with tragic consequences. The Iran Air Flight 655 incident, where a United States cruiser shot down a civilian airliner, remains a stark reminder of what can go wrong. The navies involved have studied these incidents exhaustively. Procedures have been revised. Training has been improved. Technology has advanced. But the fundamental challenge remains. In a crisis, humans and machines must perform perfectly together, under conditions of extreme stress with incomplete information. Perfection is not a reasonable expectation. So how do professional navies manage this inherent risk? The answer lies in layers of redundancy, constant training, and institutional culture that prioritizes caution without sacrificing effectiveness. Redundancy means that no single point of failure can cause catastrophe. Multiple sensors provide overlapping coverage. Multiple officers must concur on critical assessments. Multiple authorization steps are required for the most consequential actions. This slows response time, which is a cost, but it reduces the probability of catastrophic error, which is worth the cost. Training means that crews practice scenarios until responses become automatic, but not mindless. The goal is to build instincts that default toward correct action, while preserving the ability to override those instincts when circumstances demand. Culture means that organizations reward caution and punish recklessness. Officers who de-escalate ambiguous situations are valued. Officers who take unnecessary risks are identified and corrected. This is harder than it sounds. Military culture often celebrates boldness. Finding the balance between appropriate aggressiveness and inappropriate recklessness is a constant leadership challenge. The Russian Navy has its own version of these systems. Their doctrine differs in emphasis and detail, but the fundamental challenge is the same. How do you create organizations that can respond instantly to genuine threats while avoiding responses to false alarms? In your assessment, what matters more in these confrontations? The technology that enables instant response? The doctrine that guides decisions? Or the human judgment that ultimately determines outcomes? Consider that question, because the answer shapes how we think about naval power in an increasingly unstable world. This video is for educational purposes only, based on public information and publicly available analysis of naval doctrine and capabilities. It is not operational advice and should not be used to plan harm or wrongdoing. The scenarios discussed represent analysis of general principles, not classified information or specific operational details.